everyone, welcome back to the Northern Strength Fitness Podcast. My name is Brandon. I am your host today, and I am excited to tell you guys all about the marathon that I just finished running. My very first marathon, 2 months of training, and today I'm going to share kind of what led into me wanting to do this. I'm going to talk about some of my prep, and then I'm going to talk about the day of the race, kind of how it went, thoughts that were going on, things that were happening in my body. So that way, if you guys are ever curious of what it's like to run a marathon, especially with only 2 months of training and not a lot of run experience, then this could be a great podcast for you. Or if you're just interested to find out what the heck was going on in my head as I was racing and running, that could be very interesting for you because there's definitely some interesting thoughts here. So you might see Bella running around. She's got a little bit of the zoomies here. Speaking of Bella, some people asked, was she my training partner? I tried to train with Bella. I don't have her super great leash trained, so she's very tuggy and pulley. So when it came to seriously getting into the nitty gritty of this run training, she joined me for the first few weeks, and then after that, I just had to say, sorry, Bella, not this time around. But yeah, so I'm going to talk about the actual race, but then after that, talk about kind of what happened after the race and what my thoughts were, how I was feeling, and I'm slightly more recovered now. I was going to film this podcast almost the night of because I had all these thoughts fresh in my mind, but I decided that, no, I think I'm going to go with the give a few days off. I had a lot of stuff to get ready for a big event, the Northerner race, which you guys have heard me talking about, so that was it. So that was this last weekend, so a future podcast will talk about the Northerner race. But in this one, just going to focus in on the marathon. So let's dive into all that fun, all the things that went on there. So let's talk firstly about why I decided to do the marathon, and then the training going into that. Okay, so if you listen to my last podcast on my marathon and mindset, you probably got a lot of this. I'm going to keep this part relatively short. If you guys want to go back and listen to kind of the mindset of that and how the training was going a bit, you guys can definitely go into there. So reasons I wanted to do the marathon was kind of two major reasons. Number one was just to challenge myself and see what kind of growth that I could accomplish through this marathon. I knew it was going to be something very challenging, and as I've spoken to in other podcasts, I'm a big believer that challenge can bring out change, and then that change can be used in a positive way if you're kind of setting yourself up for success. I've talked about goal tip successes like making decisions, having emotional strength, having some support, building knowledge, having an environment, all those types of things, building up some discipline, having a vision and plan. So all of those kind of accumulated into this experience, and I wanted to not just talk the talk. If you are listening to the podcast, hopefully you guys can see me walk the walk, because I don't want to necessarily be one of those people that are just talking. I want to push myself and actually talk about what's going on. And Bella still got the zoomies. I don't know if you guys can, probably don't see her. She's running circles right now. So that was number one reason as to why I wanted to do this. It was for my own personal, greedy self-growth. I don't know if that's greedy or not, but the second reason was to hopefully inspire you or other people into pushing yourself beyond what you think you're able to and getting through those excuses that you give yourself. So I mentioned that I wasn't a runner. I had torn my hamstring a couple of years ago, and I've hardly been able to really even use it in a lot of athletic movements. I've been slowly trying to rehab it, not doing a great job on it myself. I'll be honest with it there. But I've hardly ran in a couple of years. So I thought, you know what? People are saying they can't do these things. They can't run the Northerner race, for example. They can't go. I was in the boat of, hey, I am not a runner. I can't really run right now, but I'm going to push myself for 2 months to run a full marathon, which if you guys don't know, is 42.2 kilometers. So it's a long run. It did take me quite a while. Actually, I think in total, 6.5 hours of running time, running/walking. I definitely did walk a little bit in there, but yeah, so I wanted to showcase you as a listener and my friends, my family, my community, my gym members that if I'm able to do this with my limited run experience and an injury and do it within a short time frame that hopefully I can inspire them. So that was kind of why I did it. As far as the training went, 2 months into it, I'm really glad that I was training, as I did go into that race feeling a lot more prepared. So I learned a lot. As I was running, I listened to podcasts, I watched YouTube videos, I consulted some other people that have been in longer endurance runs. Pierre, for example, was on a previous podcast, shared some thoughts with me there. And then the training program was relatively simple. It was just building up my run stamina, but more so like the run, my body's ability to handle the endurance, and then to learn how to take in nutrition properly. So training leading up to it was just slowly adding more and more distance, learning about how to run with a cadence. So a cadence is how quickly your feet are stepping. So every minute you have a certain amount of footsteps. So I learned that I had to speed up my cadence to then reduce the impact on my joints, which you think if you have more footsteps per minute, you might think, well, isn't that more impact because you're taking more steps? But after some research and listening to these marathon podcasts, actually, I learned that the smaller steps actually lead to less bouncing in like a bigger sense. So that way it's less jarring. You can have almost like you're almost, think of like a rock skipping over water at the very end. It's like a kind of thing. So it's the same with your feet. It's not as big and dramatic on your joints. So I upped my run cadence to about 170 steps per minute was kind of my what I found worked for me after doing some training for that. So I found during the longer runs, I was a little less sore once I started speeding up. So that was neat. As far as nutrition went, I looked into some run gels. I was drinking a lot of our supplement stuff that we have at the gym for sale. We got some electrolyte mix that we sell, Canadian-made company. Little pitch for us there to sell if you guys want any of that. I could tell you guys all about what I was taking for supplements, but looked into some run gels, some simple carbs that you can break down for energy, and then also fueling kind of meals. So I learned to have like a pregame meal. An interesting thing about this, and actually within the first few weeks of me running, I found a podcast that was all about running a marathon. I wish I could remember the name of the podcast just to give it a little bit of a shout out. Here, give me a second here. I'm going to see if I can find it on my phone because I'll give them a little bit of a shout out because they definitely helped me. So I'll give, if you guys are interested here, I'm going to pull up my phone and try to find this podcast show. There was 2 of them. One was called the Marathon Training Academy, and then the other one was called the Run Smarter Podcast. So those 2 podcasts really helped me. I also listened to the Huberman Lab as I was running, but in that Run Training Academy, I learned a lot about kind of marathoning in general, and that's where I learned about the cadence. And then the other one was more of a physiotherapy one, and then the Huberman Lab was a more of a scientific background. I learned about. I kept trying to keep my brain like learning, so those runs got really long, and I tried to make use of my time by listening to podcasts so I can at least learn stuff and go. The interesting thing that I learned with the Run Training Academy within those first few weeks, though, was that a lot of people that train for marathons, especially when they're new to it, actually put on weight. I was that person. So going back to nutrition, in my training, I learned about like hydrating and getting electrolytes and simple carbs, but I also learned that lots of people carb fuel so that way they could get the energy to run, but then they over carb fuel and end up gaining weight. So I actually gained some weight in the 2 months of training, which you might be like, oh my gosh, like, shouldn't you be losing weight? But here's the thing, you can't out-train a bad diet. Not that I had a terrible diet, but it wasn't great. But when it came time for me to be like, okay, I got a 20-kilometer run coming up tomorrow, I would rather have the energy to complete that training run. So I was giving myself some bigger meals, some more carbs, too many, because that is why you gain the weight. But at the same time, I did push through and had the energy to complete those runs, minus the last practice run, which was supposed to be a 32-kilometer run. But again, I learned from this. I did it a little bit later in the day when it was hot, and I just cramped up, lost all the energy. Even though I had fueled a lot, I just learned that my body couldn't quite handle the heat. So come marathon day, I decided to plan it for the morning. So let's talk a little bit about that step into the marathon. So that was all the stuff before the marathon, but now the actual day before the marathon. So I took a few days off. I had a wedding to go to on Saturday night. One of my university buddies got married. So I drove out there, and I knew that I had to behave as much as I wanted to let loose and go because I wanted to get sleep, because I knew that I had to get some sleep, because without the right amount of sleep for my marathon, it was not going to go good, and I was going to be disappointed in myself. So I had to kind of bite the bullet and leave the wedding early so I can get back to sleep. But I did that, and then on the day before, I had planned out some meals. I had chicken and rice, some whole chicken breasts. I just chunked it up and put in my rice, and then I actually stuck with kind of my summer meal, because one thing I learned was don't eat anything new on race day or leading up to the race, so you don't want to overcomplicate your gut and go. So I had some cheeseburgers the night before the race. So my clean chicken and broccoli was kind of like the healthier one, but as far as getting a little bit more proteins and some simple carbs with the breads and stuff, so I had some cheeseburgers the night before. So that was kind of my pre-race meal. I woke up the next day. I had planned out, I practiced eating some toast and put some peanut butter and had some banana, took a run gel. I drank my electrolyte mix, quite a bit of it actually, because I knew the salt was going to be a big factor in it. But that was my pre-gaming meal. Now, as far as the pre-gaming mindset and stuff goes, I did a couple of things to help me set myself up for success. So that's kind of going back to my goal tips for success: is have a plan and have some support and have control of your emotions. So a few of these things kind of took in action. So one of my have a plan things that I'm very thankful for this, and also a good support group, was I had reached out to people about running the race with me. They didn't have to run the whole thing with me, but if they wanted to run a chunk with me, I was very open to say, hey, if you guys are up for running a little bit with me, you want to come experience this, I would very much appreciate your support. So I had 2 people prepped that said that they'd probably come run. Well, one for sure said, and one didn't want to commit to it. You know who you are if you're listening to this, but I'm very thankful that they did commit to it, and both showed up that day. So that was one way that I prepared for it. But the other thing that was really neat was 2 people that I'd kind of bumped into or chatted with recently. One was Pierre. He had posted on his Facebook, the guy that kind of got me going. He was a marathoner, athlete, the Ironman athlete. He had biked all the way to Alaska. And then it turns out he biked there for an Ironman athlete competition, but it got canceled. But he was still going to attempt an Ironman, which is a really long swim, a really long bike ride, and a full marathon all in one day. So he was going to still do that basically the same weekend that I was planning to run my marathon. So that encouraged me, having that sort of reflection piece for me. But the other thing was as I was kind of driving by, I wanted to scout out the loop I was doing. So my loop was a 5-kilometer loop in the town of Tisdale, just through some paths and on pavement. And the loop ran by my house every 5 kilometers. So that way I could stop, grab a hydration, grab some fuel if I needed to go to the washroom or if things were going wrong. I only had a 5-kilometer way to get back to my place. So that was a nice way to set up the race for myself. But I went to go check out the loop, just a quick little drive that evening before. And I was getting kind of the excitement, the jitters of hey, this is actually happening tomorrow. I can't believe I put all this time and energy I learned. So I've been promoting it a bit, and tomorrow is the day, right? So you get those excitement days. So I went around the loop just imagining and reflecting on the experience and how tomorrow was going to go. And right when I was about to pull up to my house along the loop there, I was driving one way, and a gentleman on one of those scooters that are for people that can't walk well or need some assistance getting around was driving down the street. I gave him the old wave, and it happened to be a gentleman I bumped into just a few days ago who, oddly enough, inspired me a lot more than I was expecting that night from anything or anyone. So a little quick background on this guy. A few years ago, he had come to the gym wanted to train for some Spartan races, which are an obstacle course race that kind of inspired me to start the Northerner. But he wanted to do the trifecta. So they have like a short 5 kilometer one they call the sprint. Those are the ones that I used to do. They have a mid-range one that's around 10 or 12 kilometers. And then they have their ultra, which is, I think, 21 kilometers or half marathon, basically obstacle course race. So he wanted to train for those. So he came to the gym and got strong for them. And then he went to and did the trifecta that summer, came back and was super proud of him. He wanted to show off his medals because he was proud of what he accomplished, which totally is awesome. And I would be proud of that for myself or anyone who was able to do that, especially for an older gentleman. And he came by a little while ago at the gym in his scooter and found out that he had busted up his leg and wasn't sure how it was going to recover. It was a pretty bad break. So he was in this big recovery. So knowing that he loved those races and he actually wanted to help out with the obstacles, plus a year prior he had lost his wife. So he has had a few big drawbacks and setbacks in his life. But I believe he's surrounded by a very loving family and community. So that's definitely helping him. But for me, one of the things that resonated with me was people were asking me leading up to the marathon about what I was doing, why I was doing it, how it was going. And I said, one of the things that I thought about in the training, and this was before this night before the race, like weeks before the actual race I was going to do, I said, one of the things that helped me was I know people say this, and I was trying to think about it, but it was like, you don't have to run the race, you get to run the race. So there are a lot of people that are in situations wishing that they were able to do what I was about to do the next day, which is to even run or walk. So in this case, this gentleman just happened to hit me oddly enough right when I was about to pull in. And I'm like, you know what, this whole event, this whole thing has just fallen into place. And I was super excited and super motivated and ready to rock and roll for it. So I was going to be given the opportunity to run the race versus having to run the race. And that really helped me the next day. So the next day, let's talk how that went. So woke up, did all my fueling, which I told you guys about, did my stretches, my warm up. The goal was to run a quick kilometer out from the house and then a quick kilometer back to get 2 kilometers in and then do my 5 kilometers. So I'm going to give you guys kind of how this all went now. So if this is the part where you guys want to know what I was thinking, how my body went, we're going to go into the full experience, which was a 6.5 hour run with some pit stops at the house. So almost about a 7-hour endeavor from warm up to finish. But yeah, so that first little bit, I tried to go to the washroom before I went. I tried to make sure I was hydrated. So I did 1 kilometer out, ran back to the house, and then realized I had to go to the washroom again. So I could definitely see why they say be prepared for the bathroom and make sure you have all your food. If I didn't have a quick, easy one, I would have had to go for, if it was a bigger race, I could have been, I don't even know how much they spread out those porta potties, but it could have been a long, painful first little bit to wait for that first porta potty. So anyway, after 2 kilometers, I went back to the washroom and then I was like, okay, let's go. So I started running my first lap, and like all my runs that started in the last couple months, it was going really good at the start. I put on a podcast. I actually put on that Huberman Lab podcast, and it was about, what was that podcast? I listened to a few episodes. I think it was about like retraining your mind or something for success. Anyway, it was a nice inspiration one I hadn't listened to. So I thought, you know what? For my first few laps, it was about an hour and a half long podcast or something like that I was going to listen to. I was like, oh, let me dive into this Huberman Lab podcast for the first few laps. So started listening to that for a couple laps. And then after that, my first 2 laps went really good. Ran into some rabbits along the track. The road was quiet. It was very peaceful. It wasn't too hot. Things were feeling good. I was having my nice steps. So I did my first 2 laps, I think it was. And then I decided to switch off the podcast because I was getting up to the 12 kilometer mark. And I might have only did 1 lap. I'm pretty sure I did 2. I can't remember exactly now. This is the problem with it. But anyway, I wanted to check my cadence. So I wanted to make sure that my footsteps were in the right pace. And this was something that I did in my training. But after the first couple laps of our nice neat with the podcast, I decided to switch my audio to a metronome. So those are those little tick, 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 tick sounds. I'll pull my phone again and see if I could get my metronome sound playing on my phone. But I literally listened to this metronome, and then my goal was to have my feet hit the ground every single time that this metronome went off. And once I find this for you, and hopefully you guys can hear it here, you'll understand. Some people are like, you listen to that? That would drive me insane. But it was also kind of like calming in the sense that I could focus in on this metronome, know that it's going to help me run better. And it distracted me from maybe some of the stuff or the pain that was kind of slowly starting to creep in. Because after that first little bit, it was starting to get a little bit tiring. I was like, okay, I got to start really making sure my run form is good because I got a long day ahead of me. So I started listening to this metronome, see if I can get it played here for you guys. So that right there was the sounds that I listened to for an entire lap of the 5 kilometers. So yeah, thinking back, I know that this for sure was in the 12 kilometer range. So I did 2 laps by the time I had this plus that 2 kilometers because I was starting to get a little bit sore in that range. And then along there, I had my first surprise runner come in. So I was like, oh man, after I did it would have been at 17 kilometers. I would have done my third lap. Third lap was listening to metronome, and I was starting to get sore, but the metronome helped. I hadn't stopped other than grabbing some water and some fuel. I was doing those run gels when I stopped at the home. I hadn't stopped basically running the whole time. So I was still on a pretty much full on all running for 17 kilometers, but I was getting sore. And all of a sudden I was like getting hot, and I was taking off my shirt to start running because it was starting to warm up. And Tara Teal, one of my gym members who said she was maybe going to run, just pulled up and she's like, hey, I'm ready to run. And I was like, oh my God, this is the best. Because it was right when I was just starting to get sore. And she just gave me like such a surprise boost. I was like, oh my God, like she showed up. This is awesome. Here's my first support person. Courtney, who we'll talk about a little bit later on, but she wasn't planning on showing up for about another hour because she was going to be there for the last part of the race versus a whole kit and caboodle. But Tara showed up, and I was like, awesome, let's do this. So she asked how I was doing. I asked how she was doing. And then we started running. And that next lap, I had the metronome very quietly playing in my earbud, but I just had some company. And all of a sudden, that pain that was creeping in sort of dissipated, right? So having that person next to you, that little boost that, hey, you know what, someone's there to support me, just made me feel so good inside. And I wanted to kick off and do well for her, which is, I'm going to back up here. So that little momentum boost, this is where it got really interesting. So in my first few laps, and this is why I wanted to do the full marathon, for that nice, not just physical challenge, but mental challenge. So this is a really kind of interesting story, but a neat part of it was in those first few laps, after the first like 3.5 kilometers, it was feeling good. Like I said, I started to think about, do I really need to do this? Do I really want to do this? I already was trying to find ways to sneak out of doing it. So I was like, well, what happens if I just said like, no, like I'm going to do the half marathon and I'll do the full marathon after the Northern race. Just decided to do it. And then the people showed up, they would probably understand. So I started thinking those things, right? Trying to find ways to get out of it. I was like, no, I can't do that. Well, how else can I do this? So another really interesting thing that popped in my head on ways that I could cheat the system. And this is literally the stuff that was going in my head, which is why I want to do this. But I thought, well, if I could sneak onto a bike and slowly pedal and my GPS will still show me going around, and I'll just slowly pedal about the same speed that I run. No one will doubt that I ran this marathon because I can show them, hey, here's my laps on the geo tracking app, Strava, whatever you want to pronounce it. I was like, maybe I'll just hop on a bike for a lap or two. And when Courtney shows up, who is going to be showing up around 10, she'll never know. So that thought actually crossed my head. I was like, no, this is dumb. Like, I'm not going to do that. I trained too hard for this. I don't want to cheat myself out of this. But it's very interesting to see those types of things happen in your mind when you're going through challenges, and that little inner voice, the inner whatever, the good or the bad voice. You imagine those angels and the little demon devil guy talking back and forth. So that is one of the bigger benefits of pushing yourself, is you learn to tame that side that says no. So if you're looking for ways that you can mentally toughen yourself up, putting yourself through adversity is one of them. So one of the podcasts I was listening to called The Game or something like that, it talked about how if you had like a video game character and your life was a video game character, and if you wanted your character to level up and be the most badass and successful character, and a game to design for that, you wouldn't give your character a bunch of easy tasks. You got to go find certain things and solve puzzles and fight things and get setbacks, and that's how your character levels up and gathers resources. So going through these tough challenges and pushing yourself is how you are able to grow yourself and level up in a sense. So that little mental battle was a huge part of this, but when Tara showed up to help me run, it just lifted my spirits. So we ran together. She was doing really good. We got done that lap, and then she was going to say, oh, I'll peel off, because I knew that Courtney would probably be showing up at this time. And I was like, oh no, like you could, if you want, you could definitely stay another lap. Like you might as well kick around if you're feeling like it. She's like, oh, okay. So we met up with Courtney, who was there stretching up and warming up. She arrived when she said she was going to. So then all three of us started running a lap. I still had my metronome in. So having Courtney there was kind of like that second nice little boost for me. She was ready to rock and roll. I know as far as like inspiration and motivating for me, I don't want to say lightly, but she has inspired me a ton in the last little while, because she's pushed herself through some of the training that I've given her, and I've seen amazing results and amazing growth from her. But she's had her fair share of setbacks with injuries and dealing with that stuff. So for her to come support me at the same time, I've been doing my best to try to support her through her troubles, and us to kind of come together here for this experience. So that, again, it was just an amazing thing. And you find all these successes when you push yourself and do these challenges and get out and get active and surround yourself with people. And if this podcast gets even 10 views up to this point, and you're still listening to it, and you get a message out of this that you can go out there and achieve greatness and do awesome things and surround yourself with great people and reflect upon all that stuff, and look around you and who you surround yourself with, what your lifestyle is. And if you're not happy with it, make the change. Do what you need to do to set yourself up for success, because you only get one crack at this life. And that's why I say, don't just go through life, but grow through life. That means that this podcast, this episode, the experience, if it helps you out there, that means it's worth it. It's helping me even getting this out there, because it's a goal. It's a thing that I want to do. It's a dream, an ambition, something that I know is going to help me become a better person, to help other people and help myself. So Courtney was an amazing support. So Tara and I and Courtney all ran the first lap. A nice little thing that I put was a little cooler about the halfway point of my 5-kilometer lap. So every half a lap, I was looking at the cooler in the distance, and I could see it, target it, and be like, oh, sweet, I got a little bit of a drink here and a little bit of a break. So I would stop at the cooler. We were joking around and stuff like that at the first lap, and I started to feel my body getting broken down. So when Courtney showed up, it was around the 20-kilometer lap, and my one leg just started seizing up, the one where I tore my hamstring. And I knew that was going to be an issue, but again, I started thinking about all the training that I had done, and started thinking about even someone like Terry Fox who ran marathons on one leg and pushing through, that gentleman that I talked to you about, and having those support people. So I said, no, like I had to do little walk breaks at that point just to kind of slow it down and let my leg kind of ease up. But then I would get back into my jog, and we kept pushing through. So we finished that lap, all three of us, and Tara just finished 10 kilometers, which was the most she's ever ran in a one go in her entire life. And she's a little bit older than I am. So for her to push at her age to that, never having to do that, being in my young 30s, and her being a little bit older and still being able to push to that and experience that at 10 kilometers, I was super proud of her. You could tell she like kind of wanted to keep going. But she's like, oh no, I'm going to head home and have a quick snack, and good luck. So then Courtney and I, we stopped at my place. At that time, I wanted to quickly grab some refueling. So I made myself some toast really quick. I think it was, no, wait, I did that earlier. Earlier I had a mid 22 kilometer toast break. Just a quick little, like probably about 3-minute break when Courtney was stretching and Tara and I were introduced. So I quickly made myself some toast and kept going. But Courtney and I then started off without Tara. Tara went home, and I walked a bit because I was pretty sore. I was at 27 kilometers at that point, I think it was. I walked a bit, and then after walking a bit, I said, okay, I'm going to start jogging. Let's try to jog to the cooler. So I started jogging slowly to the cooler. So it was a big, long stretch to this cooler. And as Courtney and I were running, one of the things that popped in my head, she was like, yeah, like, Courtney was super supportive, but she's like, I can't believe like not that many people wanted to come out and run with you. And I said, yeah, like I'm really surprised at how many people aren't willing to push themselves and try some hard things and even go out of their comfort zone. And I'm starting to learn that about people. So if you're listening to that, hopefully that's not you, but if it is you, this was a very interesting reflection on me. I as much as I'm trying to push myself as a role model to do these things, I'm learning that people don't want parts of it, right? They're very complacent in their comfort zone. So I was saying, yeah, like it seems like there's not that many people that want to push out of the comfort zone in this community, within my circle, that I was reaching out to. Not saying that they don't always, but in a broader spectrum, especially like, yeah, there's just not that drive. And she was kind of confirming and said, yeah, like, I don't see that as much either. And we were just talking about it. And I was like, okay. And we were jogging. I was like, okay, I need a little bit of a walk break. So we stopped to walk a little bit. And after we stopped talking, all of a sudden another just, holy crap, what the heck just happened? Tara started jogging behind us. She had caught up to us. Courtney thought she was dropped like the veal, but she literally, so Tara went home, had a quick sandwich, decided that she wanted to continue running with us. So she parked back at my place, then started running to catch us, and then caught us because of our little walk breaks. But it was like literally talking about how people don't want to do challenges, and all of a sudden Tara just basically proved me completely wrong. Not wrong, but was like the 1 in 1 million person who was up for that challenge at the time and chased us down despite never running more than like the 10 kilometers she already ran was already the longest in her life. And she then caught us, which we were already about 2 kilometers ahead of her. So she caught us and just basically blew me out of the water. And I was like, oh my God, like what are the odds of this? Like another amazing like inspiration for me. So then Tara caught up. She talked about how she went home and just wanted to catch up with us. So then we started running again. So all three of us together kept on going, and I had to take a few walk breaks, and we were chatting and stuff like that again. Picked it up, and I would have, at the end of that third lap, Tara would have done 14 kilometers. Courtney then would have ran 10 kilometers, which was her most she's ever ran in her life. So for both those girls, they both ran more. Tara wanted to keep running, but because she had the Northern race, I kind of recommended not to because I didn't want her to get injured. And I know she was looking forward to running that with her daughter the next weekend. So I said, still be very proud of yourself. If you're listening to this at this point, Tara, you're amazing. Thank you very much for everything that you've done for me in the gym and the community and people around you. And your support has been awesome. So that I'm getting a little emotional with that. Whew. So then Tara dropped off at 15 kilometers, went home. And then Courtney and I decided to go for another lap. So I only had 10 kilometers left to go. Courtney had done 10, and then I was going and started going again with a little bit of walk. And then I found when I walked too long, I actually got really stiff. So this is like things that happened to me. I got really stiff as I was going. And then when I tried to rerun, I would just be super like sore in those first 400 meters. And then eventually I'd loosen up again. And then I take a break and I walk. And if I walk too long, I found I got stiff. So for that lap, I learned if I only walked a little bit and then I started running again, I'd have to take more quick little walk breaks, but I got less stiff. So I tried that with Courtney for the last run. And she was fighting through her own pain with her injury that she had. So we were both kind of battling that 10 kilometer left lap. And then we got to the last kilometer and she's like, yeah, that's going to be it for me. I said, that's totally fine. And again, I was just super impressed with her to push through and all the stuff that she's done. Also not necessarily known for her running and for her to be transitioning to a running phase while she's dealing with an arm injury and keeping herself active and still looking towards goals was amazing in that sense too. So, I didn't realize this, which was also really nice, Courtney. So thank you for this. But after our 15 kilometers together, and I thought she was going to be taking off after that. Like, hey, because she's from out of town. She drove about 40 minutes to come run with me from a neighboring community in Carrot River, which is awesome. Thank you. But after that 15 kilometers we did together, I only had 5 kilometers left. She said she was going to stick around until the end. So, and then cheer me on as I finished it. Whew. So anyway, my last kilometer, I did something that I did, or my last 5 kilometers, my last lap. I said, no, that's fine. It'll be a nice chance for me to kind of soak it in, reflect, and I'll push as hard as I want to kind of experience, which is kind of what I did. So I did something a little bit different the last lap than I normally hadn't done in most of my laps. And I even asked Courtney, I was like, should I listen to music? And she's like, yeah, blast it, go for it. So almost in all my training, I didn't listen to music at all. I listened to metronomes, tick, 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 or podcasts. I tried listening to music once, but I got really annoyed with it. And even if you've ever talked to me at the gym about music, I'm not big on needing music for motivation. I'm usually good at just doing the things I need to do, and I use my own thoughts for motivation. But I thought, you know what, let's just do the music. So I put on a playlist that I made on my phone back when I first opened the gym and had some songs on there that I grew up with, like some Linkin Park. That was the big one, actually. As soon as I listened to like one Linkin Park song, I was like, okay, music has its definitely benefits to it. So I blasted some music on the last lap, and I did my little run jog strategy till my whole lap was done, and I kept up my pace for that last lap, kind of on par with what I was doing, and I ended up finishing the race. Courtney was there cheering me on, and I finished the race. I didn't even know I had like a little cheer, a little yeah afterwards, and I was sore. I jogged in pretty strong, but that was my 42.2 kilometer race experience. So if you're ever wondering what it's like to run a marathon without much training or run experience and an injured hamstring with a couple support people and all kinds of things going on, that was my experience for the race. So afterwards, now we'll get into the afternoon. So Courtney cheered me on, and then she had to take off back home. Afterwards, I basically crashed. I had some food. I was stiffening up, couldn't walk very well. I definitely made sure I was drinking lots of electrolytes that day. My food reward was I had one leftover burger patty. So I had a quick little burger from the night before. And then I had taken out a steak, and I was planning on frying that up. And then I knew I had to go pick up the Gatorade station that I had left out there. So I had a cooler with Gatorade, and I wrote my name on it. It said, please don't move. This is for my marathon. So slowly walked down the stairs. Like I felt like I was like 100-year-old person with one of those walking assistance people that are assistant canes. I couldn't do it, but slowly made my way down the stairs because I live up and on a second floor is where I live. So I got stairs on the way up, stairs on the way down. So slowly inched my way down, drove to pick up the Gatorade. I went and got salt and vinegar chips because I was like, hey, that'll be good. I had a few ciders, cooked up my steak, relaxed, called my family, had a few people messaging me because I was posting on a story as I was doing it. And that was my run marathon day. The sleep was not that good. I think I woke up probably about 8 or 9 times that day. And you call me a little bit silly, but I still went in at 6 a.m. to do my fitness class. I wanted to teach still because I had one person booked in, and this one person's been doing amazing. Cass, if you're listening to this, you're doing awesome. Keep it up, girl. So I didn't want to not give her the workout that she had signed up for. So I set my alarm nice and early that day. So, cause I knew I'd be sore. So that way I could get myself out of bed. And if I couldn't move, at least I can try to give her a heads up. But I inched my way out of bed, did my class. The next day I was really sore. Everyone was asking how it went at the gym, and I was telling them how I was going. I was sore. But the more I moved the next day, the better it was. If you're wondering how it is after, as long as you're moving the next day, I seem to be a little bit better than if I was just, again, sitting down, stiffening up. Then the crazy experience, again, this is just me being silly, but also proud of myself in a sense, but I decided to teach a spin class only 2 days after. And I was thinking about canceling it, but I had some people signed up. So, you know what? Let me just try to ride a bike. And my legs were just dead. I couldn't. But I was like, you know what? I could probably push through this. What's the point of canceling this? I could still pedal, and if I need to take a little bit of rest, I always tell people in the class they can take a little bit of rest if they need to. I'm sure they'll understand. So I got into spin class on a couple of days later, and I actually did quite well. So I was pretty proud of myself there. And then within a day after, my brother showed up for the Northerner race because we had some work to do, and then all day Friday and all day Saturday, we were setting up and on our feet. And then the Northerner race was yesterday. So we did that all day. It was an amazing event. Next podcast, we're going to talk about that. And then today we had some volunteers helping out, cleaning up the race. So I've been go for about a week now. I'm looking forward to a little bit more of a rest, relax, back into regular routine in the next following days, but I'm going to get this podcast out here so you guys can see how the marathon went. Again, if you guys listen to this, I know it's a longer episode. It might have been boring listening to it, but maybe you got something out of it. Maybe found some inspiration through it. Maybe you are brand new to fitness in general and you just want to see what this is all about. Maybe you're a community member. Maybe you're a friend or a family. I just wanted to say thanks again for all the support. If you're new to this, definitely follow me on YouTube, on my Instagram, stuff like that. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, that helps out a lot. Sharing the story helps out a lot. But thank you again for all the support for the people that were along the way, the journey. As far as where I'm going to go next, I had that question asked. I do have some goals in the future. I will run another marathon. I will do it more at an actual event. So that will be exciting, where I'm actually going to be around a bunch of other people versus just me and my little town of Tisdale with a couple awesome people to run it with, a part of it with me. I want to go in an actual event. I'm not sure exactly when, but that will definitely be on my list. I do want to learn how to swim a little bit better. So next summer, I'm going to be learning how to swim so I could tackle a triathlon at some point. And then my more current goal now is just to do a little bit of a body recomp. And Bella's back here to end it off with us, guys. So, I just want to try to lose some of the weight that I put on and get back into some good shape, build up some strength, and look at some other short-term goals, building up to different ways to challenge myself and help you guys out. So thanks again for listening to the Northern Strength Fitness podcast. My name's Brandon. Bella's down here. We'll talk to you guys next time. Cheers.